I was assigned the Tesserin platform incident 4 hours after the breach, and I expected to close it inside a shift. 11 workers from 4 species caught in a high-pressure current when the extraction casing on rig stem 6 gave way. 10 required immediate vascular intervention. 1, a contract welder named Josiah Garner, required nothing. My name is Saren Drell, incident physiologist, Cooperative Industrial Safety Division, Tesserin Deep Current Extraction Grid. My job is reviewing biological outcomes following workplace incidents. In 14 years, I have filed 611 post-incident physiological reports. This is the only one I was asked to file twice, once for the Safety Division, and once, in closed session, for the Bureau of Xenobiological Threat Assessment. The breach itself was unremarkable. A fatigue fracture in the primary extraction casing admitted roughly 200 liters per second of unprocessed mineral suspension current at 400 kilopascals into the rig stem 6 personnel corridor. The suspension, a slurry of lithic particulate and extraction solvent, carries an abrasion index sufficient to strip industrial sealant in under a minute. Against unprotected tissue, the effect is closer to a high-velocity cutting tool than a fluid. 11 workers in that corridor, 4 species, every one of them hit. The medical data from the first 10 followed a pattern I have read hundreds of times. The current opened the skin. Circulatory fluid, whatever name each species gives it, began to leave. Without immediate pressure application and synthetic coagulant administered within 90 seconds to 3 minutes, volume loss enters a critical cascade. Heart analog output drops, perfusion collapses, consciousness goes. 2 of the 10 died before the emergency team reached them. The other 8 survived with varying degrees of intervention. All 10, without exception, required an external agent to stop the bleeding. Garner did not. I assumed when I pulled his file that he had been wearing enhanced protective equipment, or that the current had struck a less vascularized region, or that a colleague had applied pressure before the medics arrived. I checked each possibility. His equipment was standard issue, the same light thermal suit as the others. The current struck him across the left forearm, the right flank, and the upper thigh, 3 separate lacerations, all in heavily vascularized tissue. No colleague applied pressure. Garner's incident statement, which I read 3 times, said simply, "I got cut. I held my arm against my side for a bit, and I went back to the valve override. He completed an 11-step manual valve isolation sequence while bleeding from 3 open wounds. The emergency team reached him 14 minutes after the breach. When the lead medic cut away his thermal suit, they found the following. Left forearm, a 9-centimeter laceration, depth to fascia. Bleeding had stopped. The wound was covered by a dark, semi-rigid biological film. Right flank, a 7-centimeter laceration, depth to the subcutaneous layer. Same film, same cessation. Upper thigh, a 12-centimeter laceration, the deepest of the 3, same film. Cessation complete. I will be direct about what I initially believed. I believed Garner had applied some kind of field sealant, a portable chemical cautery kit, perhaps, something human manufactured and undeclared. I ordered a material analysis of the films covering all 3 wounds. The films were not a sealant, they were not synthetic, they were not applied. They were his blood. I need to be precise here because the distinction is the entire finding. In every other species on that platform, in every species I have ever reviewed in 14 years of incident work, circulatory fluid exits a wound and continues to exit until something outside the body stops it. Pressure, synthetic coagulant, cautery, surgical intervention. The body does not stop it. The fluid is a transport medium. It carries oxygen, nutrients, waste product. It moves in one direction through a closed system. When the system is opened, the fluid leaves. That is what circulatory fluid does. Human blood does something else. Within seconds of the tissue breach, a protein in the surrounding plasma, he called it thrombin when I asked, as casually as if nomming a household tool, activated a chain of 12 additional enzymatic factors. I have since learned they number these factors with Roman numerals and have known about them since before they left their own atmosphere. The chain operates autonomously. No conscious input from the human. No external signal. The damage itself is the signal. The cascade proceeds as follows. Platelets, small, unpowered cellular fragments already circulating in the blood, detect the breach site by chemical gradient and physically migrate to it. They adhere to the exposed tissue. They link to each other. They form a temporary plug within 60 to 90 seconds. While this is happening, the enzymatic cascade converts a dissolved plasma protein, fibrinogen, into long, insoluble strands of fibrin. The fibrin strands weave through and around the platelet plug. They cross-link. They harden. The result is a dense, semi-rigid biological mesh, anchored to the wound margins, sealed against fluid loss, formed entirely from the blood itself. The blood that was leaving his body stopped leaving, reorganized its own molecular architecture, and built a barrier. I sat with that analysis for a long time. I reran the spectrometry. I requested the original tissue samples and examined them under magnification myself. The fibrin mesh was there, an organized lattice, structurally coherent, woven between living tissue margins. Not random, not accidental, architecturally deliberate, assembled from the raw material of the fluid that was, moments earlier, escaping through the very opening it now sealed. I scheduled a follow-up interview with Garner. Standard protocol. He was still on the platform, still working light duty, he said, though I noted his definition of light duty included a 6-hour shift on the secondary manifold line the day after sustaining 3 lacerations. He sat across from me in the platform medical bay. He still had the wound dressings the medics had applied, over wounds that had already closed themselves. I asked him to describe what happened when the current struck him. He looked at the far wall for a moment. It hurt, he said. 3 cuts, pretty deep ones, bled for a minute or two, then it clotted up. Clotted, I said. Yeah, he shifted in his chair. You know, clotted. The bleeding stopped. He paused and looked at me the way someone does when they suspect the question is about something other than what was asked. Is that what you're asking about? I told him it was. He seemed embarrassed, not by the wounds, and not by the pain, by my interest, as though I were asking him to explain breathing. It's just what blood does, he said. You get a cut, it bleeds for a bit, and then it stops. It scabs over. It's been doing that since, I don't know, since always, I guess. Since always. I confirmed this independently. Human medical literature, which they publish freely in volumes that would fill a standard cargo hold, documents the coagulation cascade as a baseline function of the species. Not a mutation, not a genetic enhancement, not a medical intervention. A standard feature of every healthy human circulatory system, present from birth, operational without instruction, and so universally ordinary to them that they do not consider it remarkable. Their children skin their knees and wait for the scab. Their surgeons account for it in every procedure. Their word for the failure of this system, hemophilia, is classified as a rare disorder precisely because the system almost never fails. They have had this since before they had written language. I filed my report with the safety division. Routine incident closure. No equipment failure beyond the known casing fracture. I noted Garner's outcome as physiologically anomalous relative to all other species present and attached the full tissue analysis as an appendix. That should have been the end of it. 6 days later, I was summoned to the Bureau of Xenobiological Threat Assessment. A small conference room. 3 officials. No windows. They had read the appendix. They asked me to present the tissue analysis in full and to state, in my professional capacity, what the physiological implications were for species-level threat classification. I told them the truth. Among the 412 catalogued species in the cooperative, not one possesses an autonomous, self-initiating wound closure system, embedded in the circulatory fluid itself. Every other species requires external intervention to survive a significant vascular breach. Humans do not. Their blood is not merely a transport medium. It is a self-monitoring, self-repairing infrastructure, a system that detects its own failure, responds without instruction, and rebuilds the boundary between interior and exterior from its own substance, using its own substance in minutes. They asked me for a recommendation. I said I had an observation. In 14 years, I have reviewed 612 workplace incidents. In every one, the injured party depended on something outside itself to survive: a medic, a sealant, a tourniquet, a machine. Josiah Garner depended on his own blood. And his blood, every human's blood, it turns out from birth to death, awake or unconscious, aware of the wound or not, had never once, in 200,000 years, not answered.